The discussion around environmental issues is significant and often polarizing, as it can be seen as a battle between economic growth and protecting the environment for naturalistic and intrinsic reasons. This is often boiled down to an argument between science, ideology, and economic principles. We must first understand the spectrum of where ethical viewpoints integrate themselves. On one side, we have the instrumental value, which suggests that as humans, we work towards sustainable resource development in efforts for maximizing social welfare in a utilitarian way with regards to creating wealth. It's instrumental in the way that it has the objective of creating overall greater human well-being. Now, on the other side, we have the intrinsic values, and this looks at the value itself. This means that it's looking at the means itself that would essentially satisfy the end in an instrumental way. Now, along this spectrum, we can categorize the values into four groups, albeit there's some gray area in between and some overlap. Now, first on the spectrum, we'll look at sustainable resource use, which is the most utilitarian perspective where resource development is a means for a profit to increase humanity's overall well-being, but it must be done sustainably to avoid the tragedy of the commons and ensure profitability into the future. An example of this would be to prevent clear cutting of a timber stand and instead selectively log it to ensure logging can support the small town's economy long into the future. Next, we would have conservation and preservation. This is it looks at preserving the environment for reasons other than profits, such as the intrinsic values for deeper human purposes, and this may include recreation, spiritual renewal, and maybe reflection. A conservation example would be to stop this logging operation in an instrumental way to protect a community's watershed for future drinking purposes. Whereas from a preservation standpoint, you'd want to turn it into parkland so residents can relish in nature's awe-inspiring intrinsic beauty. Now, with rights-based perspectives, it's a deontological point of view, and this would look at human rights and needs beyond humanity's needs. This leans more into the intrinsic value of things and of themselves, and they're non-consequentialist in nature. These rights may be for animals and providing a voice for their perspectives. And deep ecology is an extension of rights-based perspectives, and it leans furthest into the intrinsic value of all facets of nature. They would argue that humans need to look at themselves as fully embedded and independent of other species. Therefore, we should take care of them in equal regard as we would take care of ourselves. With the deep concern for diversity, it adds a political element, rejecting humans' exploitation of nature and other humans. And, with any extreme, criticisms are that it gives moral relevance to organisms which we might consider minuscule, like some microbes or mosquitoes. The author makes a point that mainstream discourse currently looks at the instrumental reasons for sustainability. They reckon that corporate sustainable management can extend its ethical influence if it includes more intrinsic reasoning in the discussion. And I agree. It isn't one avenue or another. Like conversation, it needs to be a balance from both sides so we do not alienate opposing perspectives as progress needs to be an amalgamation of ideas. To look at one side, it creates labels such as the intrinsic hippie or the instrumental capitalist. These capitalists who may not see the urgency for intrinsic value to be brought into the picture
or in environmental action are likely not to sacrifice any short-term profits outside of the direct detrimental effect that it may cause on humanity's greater good. While there is controversy about intrinsic value, that it is subjective to who derives that value, it does create a space, though, for environmental protection to be considered beyond humans' needs. By discussing the intrinsic value in the corporate world, we will normalize appreciation for preserving nature beyond humanity's needs, and it also creates awareness that we are fundamentally dependent on nature. Thank you.